It's been another dramatic news week and, dare I say, weekend. Here to talk about the ins and outs of what's been happening, I'm joined by our Newzroom Africa politics editor, Sbu Ngalwa, sitting with me in studio right now as we speak. And also virtually, we are joined by the Sunday Times journalist, Kgothatso Madisa. He is with the newspaper that we are going to start with. The headline there, aced, NEC booting drives home the Secretary General's isolation. Kgothatso, let me start with you. I'm going to boycott my editor in studio for the moment. And I want to start with the very article that you guys are leading with. In the main there, you focus the attention on Ace Magashule, who attended the meeting at the start of this special NEC, and then he found himself quickly being booted out of that meeting. Just take us through briefly what actually happened.
Hi, Xoli. Thank you for having me. Hi, Sbu. And afternoon to your listeners. So, as you know, the ANC SG Secretary General was served with a suspension letter early this week. But in his defiance campaign, he decided that he is still the SG and that he has the right to participate in the NEC meeting. So he got the login somehow. He was not meant to get them, but we believe that the administrators may have given him perhaps for over fears or anything or something like that. But anyway, he logged in immediately when they realized that he's in the meeting. Several NEC members, and we believe the charge was led by Mondli Kungubele, questioned whether the NEC meeting was constituted properly, given that there were suspended members who were now in the meeting. Obviously, was referring to the SG, and yeah, the debate started there, leading to the chair of the meeting, Kwete Mantashi, asking that whether Ace should be there, and Ace response he says no, but I've appealed. But you see, that's where the problem then started, because there is no appeal structure. So there's no one to hear Ace's appeal, and that means he remains suspended. So he had to be booted out of the meeting after very early, actually, very early on in the meeting. Yes.
Sbu, let's come to you in studio. You are also carrying one of the weekend newspapers, the City Press. The headline there, Magashule tries to break the NEC. Take us into detail what this article talks to, which in part, I've read it, but it looks at, or it tries to understand exactly what the Secretary General, who's suspended now, his attempts are in trying to collapse, I suppose, the highest decision-making structure of the ANC in between conferences.
I guess, Xoli, it was to be expected that all our major Sunday titles would lead with the Ace Magashule story, given the events of earlier in the week, where there was that letter of suspension, which was countered by his counteraction, where he sought to suspend the president. But I think him attending that meeting, or trying to be part of that meeting, was a continuation of his defiance. And I think it has actually he has gotten to the point where he believes that if he is to go down, he's not going down without a fight. If it means he collapses the ANC, and then so be it. Because you can imagine the impact of a supposed letter of suspension for a party president, what implications that has, one, for the organization, but also for the country and perceptions of political stability in the country. So I guess for the anti-Magashule grouping, the they had no choice but actually to kick him out of that meeting, given the fact that he had already been served with a suspension letter, and that also means that he cannot be part of that meeting until, at the very least, that structure has been put in place. But what we are seeing, though, Xoli, is that there's this report you just referred to where the ANC is warning against these leaks. Yes, there have been a number of leaks, and we've carried some of those. But if you look at what is at the heart of it, at the heart of that is some kind of a rebellion within the ANC-NEC. There's this grouping that feels that there's a certain narrative that they want to communicate, because they, in a way, feel drowned by the dominance of the so-called Ramaphosa grouping, because Ace Magashule, in his interview with the national broadcasters, actually said that Cyril Ramaphosa's grouping is in charge of the NEC. And when you sat with Tony Yengen here a few days ago in this very seat, his lament was the fact that some NEC members are quick to push for a vote which is almost un-ANC, given the fact that we know that the ANC decisions are usually taken through consensus, where sometimes discussion will carry on until the early hours of the morning. But what he was saying, and if you piece that together with what Magashule was saying, is that there is as things stand, President Ramaphosa has control of that NEC, and that is why some of his members get irritated, for a lack of a better word, and want to push for a vote, because they know that where that vote will lead. Now, there's a leak of Thabo Mbeki. Thabo Mbeki's voice note. And if you listen to it, he's raising an issue around what has been said by some members who are raising concern about the status of the ANC. But I think most people have been quick to point out, or to want to interpret that to mean that Mbeki is saying that the current leadership is not doing a good thing and that this could lead to a split. Yeah. But when I listen to him, and there's a link that is being made to the group of 8 who were expelled after Morogoro. Sure. So for me, if you understand the story of the group of 8, then how everyone is interpreting Mbeki, I don't think that's what he means. Perhaps what he's saying is that it may be inevitable that some people would have to be kicked out. Because what happened to the group of 8, as led by Tennyson Makiwane, they were opposed to one. There was a consultative conference in 1967 where the SACP came on board, and there was unhappiness about Morogoro's decision in '69, where they said that the ANC must open up its membership to whites and Indians. And there was this feeling that the communists who were coming through the SACP, or Yusuf Dadus and Joe Slobos, were taking over. So this Africanist grouping led by Tennyson Makiwane was opposed to that. And it took a number of years until they were kicked out in 1975. Now that was those were ideological differences. But I cannot argue now that the differences in the ANC are ideological, although I hear time and again people talk about a radical economic transformation. But I think now radical economic transformation is being used as a ruse to argue for those who are either being hounded by law enforcement agencies, or those who are facing difficulties within the party.
Sbu, let's take a pause there for a second, and we also have Kgothatso Madisa. He is the Sunday Times journalist. We're going to continue this conversation. There are a whole lot of other stories making headlines, but I suppose the ANC was going to dominate the headlines. We'll continue this in a bit. Very good afternoon to you. If you're just joining us, it's been a dramatic week, and we don't just say that because the ANC is in turmoil. I think the organization has been in a difficult position for some time. But on Friday, we also saw something that I suppose we've only read about in history books. The issue that played itself out in Gwanongoma. Never seen before. Divisions in the Zulu royal house playing themselves out on live TV. Kgothatso, I want to come to you because the front page of the Sunday Times has a picture of King Misuzulu Kazwelithini And just moments ago, I had a conversation with the traditional prime minister of the Zulu nation, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who is worried at the moment, saying that the security of the newly installed king is being compromised by the police, and the ANC has a hand in it.
Yes, I was listening to that conversation. So he released that statement very late last night, and sounding this warning or this alarm that the king, the newly crowned king, could be in danger. And I mean, it doesn't make sense if it is true, it doesn't make sense for the government in KZN to pull the security detail of the newly installed king, especially given the contestation that is to be expected or that played itself out in public regarding the actual throne. So, look, the government, the ANC in KZN released a statement refuting that the security has been pulled. I believe the Minister of Police also did the same. So it's really confusing. I mean, I don't think Umtana would have released that statement if there was nothing. Yeah. I don't think he would have just woken up and released that statement. So there's clearly something there. We just need to find out what. But at the moment, these things happened very late last night. So at the moment, I don't have much details on that. And my colleague, I haven't really spoken to my colleague Zimasa Matiwan, who actually authored the piece that we have in the Sunday Times today about the battle for the Zulu Roaches. Yes.
Sbu, if anything, the Zulu Prime Minister, Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi, is actually reiterating the message that is contained in that statement. And he reiterated that on Newsfeed this afternoon, that he stands by that statement. So what does that mean then? Because I think we all saw what happened on Friday. It was a very tense moment where I thought even journalists may potentially could have had harm come their way because of the volatility of what was happening at the Makengane Royal Palace. Why would there even be suggestions that security of this newly installed king could even be tinkered with?
Look, my suspicion here, Claude, and I am stand corrected, is that there may have been some whispers about a possible withdrawal or reduction of security, as I would expect, because what he says, Prince Buthelezi says in the statement, is that the argument is that because the king in waiting has not been installed yet, then that means that he should not be enjoying the protection that he is. But he makes a good point, though.
There's a distinction. Yes. Yes, you're correct. He's not been installed, I guess, in the eyes of the public officially. He's not been recognized by government. But as per their rules within the Zulu Royal House, he is on the throne as we speak. That's what the prince is saying.
And I agree with you, because he then says that for any South African, if you're under threat, your life is under threat, or there's a security assessment that is made that determines as such, that makes such a determination, then you should be entitled to protection. So that's a valid argument. But I think what we're seeing here, Xoli, actually, it's going to get to that. It's the kind of relationship that the Zulu royal household enjoys with the KZN government. It has been under the spotlight for a while, and because of the demise of the former king, King Zolitinga Peguzulu, trust me and mark my words, watch, there will be changes into how that department is being handled. Because for the longest time, there have been murmurs and ructions between the royal household and the government department. I mean, as far back as the early 2000s, when I used to sit in portfolio committee meetings at the in Pietermaritzburg at the legislature, and time and again, when the royal household department is asked to account, and the HOD would say, they would ask questions, why did you overspend on this and that? And they would say, no, well, that's what the king wanted and the king gets what he wants. Why did you travel with such a big delegation to such a place? Well, it was the king's delegation and we do not ask. So there's always been some kind of a difficult relationship between the government. And so I think on the part of the KZN government, perhaps what Umdonogapindagene is
alluding to.
Yes, and what he could be predicting or what he's seeing in the horizon is that there may be those changes. Because look at it now. Where is that department located? It's located in the office of the Premier. But others are arguing, why does it not fall under the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Department? Is that what's going to happen now? Let's watch and see. And it may well be that the KZN government may see an opportunity of trying to readjust or kind of like change the way the Department of Royal Household works. Now, I think that's what is coming here. The issue of the security, yes, it has been, I think it would be foolish for any government, and in fact for the SAPS to withdraw that, the security. But what I think is coming here is that there will be a pushback that we're seeing between, from the royal household in terms of what other changes that the KZN provincial government may be wanting to introduce. We know that that department has a budget of about 70 million. And over the years, the royal household has always argued that it's not enough. And yes, it is the only royal household in this country with such privileges.
Gentlemen, I want to conclude this conversation by us throwing forward. Kgothatso, the ANC branches, let me say some branches of the ANC in the eThekwini region, and you will understand when I say the eThekwini region, we immediately, as political journalists, think about the significance of eThekwini because of the numbers it sends to a national voting conference of the ANC. They are the biggest throughout the country. But I use the word very carefully. Some branches of the ANC in eThekwini are already talking not just about the reinstallation of Ace Magashule and Zuma needing not be touched by law enforcement. But the interesting element is about this special conference that they are alluding to here. How much support do you think they're going to get in KZN and then you spread out in other provinces?
Perhaps we need to take it back a bit, perhaps to almost 3 years ago when former President Jacob Zuma was recalled. There was this call for, that there could be war in the horizon, and Zuma commanded a whole lot of support. He still does today. But we didn't see any of that. So I don't think there's a crisis, and I certainly don't think Magashule, as much as he does command support, I don't think he commands as much support as Zuma did and certainly still does. And I mean, yes, eThekwini is the biggest region. But if you look at the section, I think it's Rule 29 of the ANC Constitution, it says majority of the provinces. Before you head to conference. It doesn't just say several branches. It says provinces. So right now, you don't even know where the province of KZN itself stands on this matter. You don't even know where Mpumalanga stands. You don't know where Free State stands. As they've recently disbanded the PEC there. So we still have a long way to go. And I think even in 6 months from now, when they review the suspension of Mr. Magashule, he will still be on suspension. I don't think we should be reading too much into it. It's reaction. I mean, for instance, the statement that the suspension that the SG, the letter of suspension to the president, also there, he was testing the waters to see, the reaction. And the ANC, even through Pule Mabi, said there's no such thing. Even president, when he was asked, he literally just the journalist off. There is no crisis. Former President Jacob Zuma was removed from his position unceremoniously, and people were saying that we should be panicking, but there was nothing. So even now, I think the SG the life moved on. And I think the SG should embrace it. Perhaps even instead of doing all these things that could lead to an expulsion, he should actually go to the top six and say to them, guys, give me some room to breathe. Yes, I may not represent the party nationally, but can you at least allow me to once in a while still communicate with the branches, because that's where I'm mostly strong. Because Ace feels very free when he's with the people at the lowest level. So he should be asking for that because he is suspended. He is facing charges. Even the Integrity Commission did say that he recommended he steps down, but he did not step down, or he was not suspended because of the Integrity Commission, as he alludes to in his appeal papers. But he was suspended because of these guidelines that were done to say, if you are charged in court, step aside. He is charged. I really don't think there's a crisis here.
All right. Let's conclude this conversation, Sbu Ngalwa. And we are reading in that newspaper in front of you, that's the City Press, that there might be an attempt to try and collapse the highest decision-making structure, the NEC, that very structure that's meeting this weekend. We know that it's an 80-member body. There's a mention of 26 leaders who may possibly be with Magashule. What happens if the NEC can no longer quorate? Would that force the ANC into an early conference?
I guess that is exactly the point, Xoli, where they would want to force the ANC into a crisis. But having watched politics over the past few years, I've yet to see people sacrifice their political lives for a leader. I mean, taking you back to the very point that Kgothatso is making, when President Zuma was fired, not a single minister left their jobs. Not a single member of the NEC left their jobs.
In contrast to what we saw in the Mbeki era.
Yes, where we had ministers like the Deputy President, I think it was Minister Didiza at the time, I cannot remember all their names who did. But the reality is that at the end of the day, in as much as politicians would like us to believe that they are doing this thing selflessly, the reality is that they are in these positions for themselves first and foremost.
Yeah.
And I also do not believe that with Magashule, there may be some ructions currently, and as you can see, that if you look at the pattern, listen to what Dakota Lekhete says. He says, let's go to a special conference. Listen to what those branches in eThekwini, some of those branches are saying, let's go to a special conference, because there is a realization and acceptance by Ace Magashule and those who follow him, or those who support him, that they have lost the confidence and they've lost the support, not just in the NEC. We now see also the Women's League. Do they have the Youth League? I don't think so. The Veterans League, not so much. Do they have all the provinces? No. What would help them? How can they, if they are to recapture the ANC? It's either they wait until December next year. What will happen? What will become of them if they wait until then? So I guess then their strategy is to create as much chaos as possible currently and force the ANC into an early conference. And whether that happens or not will be determined by how the ANC plays in the coming weeks and months, But as things stand, that grouping may be loud, they may be making the loudest noise, but the reality is that they are not in control. And the ANC structures most of them still have to go to conference.
Yeah.
So they cannot claim to have support of those structures, Xoli.
All right. Sbu Ngalwa, let me thank you very much, our politics editor here at Newzroom Africa, and Kgothatso Madisa. He is with the Sunday Times newspaper. My thanks to you, my good brother, for joining us this afternoon. Just ahead, we discuss the Metro bus strike in Johannesburg. Things are about to intensify. You'll have to listen in and watch on when we return after the break.